All right, one phone up. A little bit in the front, and you're okay. Everything else. And there you go. All right, it's all yours. Let's see more attention.
As the world gets more and more technological and more things become more wireless, we start to deal with issues such as, or we start to have things such as cell phones and tablets and other handheld devices, which everyone uses and everyone loves. But what a lot of people don't think about are the dangers that are associated with such devices. What is the face of a computer? Years ago, you would have said a computer is just something you sit down at a desk at and you type in on a keyboard and has a screen, a solid thing. You can't take it anymore unless you want to hurt your back carrying it around. Nowadays, computers are everywhere, in our pockets, in our wallets, in our cars, and they're becoming more and more powerful. These are stats taken from the NPT Marketing Group and the Gartner Technology Analysis Incorporated, related to the sales of handhelds versus desktops. Over the last few years, sales of desktops have been down, but in this last year, desktop sales have made a spike of 8.5%, which doesn't seem like a lot, but after lower sales, it's good. But then when you look at stuff like laptop sales rising 28.9%, smartphone sales rising 42%, and tablet sales rising 49%, you start to wonder, where are computers going? In 2013, 22% of the market, of the computer market, was held by tablets alone. Now, tablets and smartphones are really useful and really nice to have because they're just a computer in your pocket that you can do pretty much anything you want on if you know how to use it. But they can be dangerous because they're in your pocket, they're hidden, and if you want to hide it, it's very easy to hide. You can move it from place to place and nobody will even know it's there. And if you need to get rid of it, it's not a big box you have to get rid of. You can just take a hammer to something the size of a credit card and the proof that you had it can be gone. And this is a real problem when it comes to IT, because if you're trying to guard a network against being invaded, then how can you guard against something that you don't even know is there half the time? Well, there are systems set in place by phone manufacturers that make it harder for illegal activities to be done with their phones, such as internal safeguards such as locks within the drivers. Software availability of illegal software is very, very limited to the point where you have to know a lot about your cell phone to be able to do it. And then there's also the issue of, well, in network penetration, there's the issue of lifespan, because cell phones run off a battery or you have to plug them in, and having a cell phone just sitting around plugged in can get somewhat suspicious sometimes. Cell phones also are getting stronger, but they aren't really that strong yet. They are smaller computers that don't have the power to really break through a lot of, say, the encryption or the security that we have. And cell phones, while they've become cheaper, can still be expensive, especially if you need to rebuy them or if you're worried about losing data, such as if you leave a cell phone around to monitor something and that gets found, you don't exactly want to go and claim that device as your own. Now, I mentioned that it's harder to use cell phones for surveillance, network surveillance sort of things because of drivers that are set in the cell phone that block it. These drivers are set on stuff like the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth cards to stop you from using features such as network monitoring and packet injection, which are things that are very necessary if you want to, say, steal data that's just randomly being sent across the network, or even inject stuff into the network to fake like a website, or set your phone up as a dangerous device. One exception that has come out in the recent years of cell phones that has not had that security is the Nokia N900, which was made between Nokia and Microsoft as a more open source and more unlocked phone that was aimed more towards the Linux people because they really just enjoyed the ability to create apps and just simply upload it onto the phone. It's open sourced, it's unlocked, and it looks like a normal cell phone. So, well, because it is a normal cell phone. And in the end, it was really easy to use because it has a touch screen, a decent-sized touch screen, and it has a full-size keyboard. If you want to, say, put in commands for different programs, it's easy to do so. And when it came out that this phone was easy to do stuff like that with, a company named Pune Express was formed. Back in 2010, the Nokia N900 came out in 2009, so it's a little dated, but it still has enough power to do things. In 2010, Pune Express was formed, and they started out with the Pune phone, which was just, what they did was they bought up a large number of the N900s and then just started loading software on there, like Backtrack and Webbuster, and just this is a picture of the home screen on the Pune phone. And each of those icons has a different use, such as some of them just disable certain locks on the phone to make it able to sniff out packets or enter promiscuous mode to explore the network. And some of them have programs that are set in place to actually set up, like the evil access point app will go in and set up a website for you where people can just connect and it looks like the normal website and you can steal their info. And it came preloaded with software, it was pre-configured, and with just a simple press of a button on the home screen, it could be pretty automated. Now, that started to get a little dated, and people wanted a bigger screen over the 3.5-inch screen that came with that. And when new technology started coming out, like Google's Nexus 7, they realized that you don't have to find a phone with these specific unlocked drivers to be able to do stuff. The Google Nexus 7 is an Android tablet, 7-inch screen, and a gig of RAM, so it's more powerful than the phone was, and has a 7-hour battery life. And since it's the Android market, you can put any app that you want on there, and you can program your own apps, along with uploading drivers and just putting good things on there and bad things. But what they realized was, even though tablets suffer from the same issue as phones, where the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth chips are locked from packet sniffing and packet injection. What they can do is plug a USB adapter into the micro USB port in the bottom of the tablet, and then they can actually use USB devices such as USB Wi-Fi, USB Bluetooth, and USB 4G. And when the drivers are installed, those work just like they would on a computer, with no limitations for sniffing or injection. Now, the N900, what I mentioned was on the pricier side. The phone itself sold for around $650 retail, and Pune Express, after they went through all the work of uploading the software and reshipping it, they sold anywhere from $800 to $900, making a decent profit. The Google Nexus 7 you can easily get for less than $200 nowadays, and Pune Express sells it as the PoonPad now for almost $1,100. So they're making a pretty decent income off that. And because the PoonPad's more powerful, it's able to use other programs that the Poon phone was not able to use. And like I said, it has a 7 to 9 hour battery life. So you can take this someplace, hide it underneath a chair, and just let it do its work, and then come back at the end of the day, and no one will question it if you hide it well enough. Now, one issue with using tablets with USB things attached like this is someone might see a tablet just sitting underneath the chairs hidden somewhere, and they might not think much of it until they see a cord with an antenna sticking out, and that might look a little suspicious. And even though this is cheaper, $150 to $200 for the Nexus, the adapters are around $50 to $100 each, and if you put a lot of work into setting those up, it can be quite a loss if they're found. And if you're found associated with it, you can get pretty heavy fines and fun police stuff like that. Now, now that mobile devices are out, we shouldn't completely shift our defenses against mobile devices. While Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and cellular technology are very part of our world now and very dangerous if taken over, and the mobility of these devices is a real issue, we still have to worry about the old devices that were originally, or that have always plagued us. Stuff like the top right, the power strip, is actually another device sold by Pune Express called the Pune Power. And built within that is they have Wi-Fi chips, Bluetooth chips, and just everything you can want. And there's also 2 Ethernet ports on there. And it's set so that only the modern monitoring cables, or cables are run through a specific chip. So when it's being monitored, the network doesn't actually know it, because no packets are actually entering or leaving the network unless the network is specifically set up to watch out for that sort of thing. And that can run on its own. The same sort of thing goes on with this throwing star in the bottom right corner. You find a cable and you can just snip it, put 2 Ethernet ports on there, or Ethernet plugs, and then you can put the 2 new plugs on each side, and then the 2 other plugs just have the monitoring cable run through, so you can monitor the network, and it doesn't even look like there's a new device plugged in. And then finally, the bottom left is another device that is pretty small, and it's actually a professional tool that is specifically designed for penetrating networks, pretty automated. But each of these devices, along with the simple little keylogger in the very middle, are very dangerous for networks because you run the risk of losing very sensitive material and possibly losing your network if the device is used the wrong way. What is the face of the computer? The mobile device scene is booming, and even though there's been a small jump in desktop computers this year, with companies like Microsoft even admitting that they're shifting more towards tablets with stuff like Windows 8, it is a dangerous thing not to worry about mobile devices in your network. Any questions?
I know everybody does like Windows 8, but they like got a Surface. It's really cool because they basically shrunk the whole laptop down to a tablet, its phone. I was just wondering why doesn't Macintosh do it? Don't you think that's the next step for Macintosh now to come up with their own tablet that's a mini Mac? I mean that sounds cool to me. I don't know. It's funny.
They already have the iPad, and the iPad runs on iOS, which is the same operating system that the iPhones and the iPads or iPods use. So it's, in a sense, they kind of have their own. And since they already have Macintosh versus the iOS, they don't really have a large need to branch the two together. And along with that, a lot of the apps that work on iOS will transfer over to Mac.
That's a good presentation. As far as safeguards on end users, I guess IT folks, not end users. What is the number one thing you think in your mind that folks are getting away with in the workplace that IT, because you mentioned, you know, if they don't know what's there, it's hard to watch, it's hard to detect if you don't know what's there. What are some things that you think, you know, just thinking out loud, that you think is going on in workplaces that IT folks have no clue in a lot of places what people are doing with their mobile devices?
Using phones as penetration tools has been an idea that's been around for a long time, but because of the limitations put on the phone, or different phones by different companies and closed source drivers, it's been pretty hard for people to actually break most phones in for penetration testing. But beyond that, I'm not quite sure.
Okay. All right. Okay. It's good, man. Good job. All right, next presenter is going to come on up. Sir. All right, let me make sure I got the right one. Just sure. Right here?
Yes.
Okay. Don't push that button. On there somewhere. There. All right. Okay, let's give Josh our attention.
So the topic that I chose was how antivirus software works. But before we can know about antivirus and exactly what it is, we're going to know exactly what it's defending against. And that is a virus. A computer virus is software that spreads from program to program or from disk to disk and uses each infected programmer does to make copies of itself. It's pretty much like computer sabotage, if you think about it. Now, there's a whole bunch of different types of viruses, but the most common ones are your program viruses, which are infected through executable programs, which that can be anything. You could download a link, and as soon as the link is up and running, it's executed, and bam, you got a virus. Another common one that I've dealt with a lot is a boot sector virus. Getting in all your boot files, and then whenever you boot up the computer, you can't really do anything because it's restricting all that access. And then the other one that I found out that was the biggest problem was a polymorphic virus. As soon as a polymorphic virus is uploaded and you try to find it, it's just going to switch to something else, so you can't really find it. I guess you could move into the category of it's considered malware. Now that we know what a virus is, let's find out about what antivirus software is. Antivirus software is computer program or computer software that is used to detect, prevent, and remove malicious computer viruses. Antivirus software is free, and every person with a PC or with a tablet like Android operating system should have antivirus software. The couple of free antivirus softwares, the most popular ones that I found is Avast. Avast is awesome. I use it myself. AVG I've used a couple times, but it's not as good. And then PandaCloud free antivirus. There is paid versions of the antivirus. They do have additional security features, but you don't really need it unless you're in like a business or something like that. Okay. Now we figure out how does it work. What antivirus software does is it runs in the background, and that's called on-access scanning. Pretty much what it's doing is every time you open up a file, it runs a quick virus scan. You don't even know it's doing it because it's in milliseconds. You don't even know it's doing it, and it makes sure that none of the virus signatures, or also known as virus definitions, is found in the file. Because as soon as it's found in the file, it stops the executable, and then it terminates the file, and then it will have the option to quarantine it or not. Or if it's a false positive, you can just go right through it, but that's just not a good idea. Antivirus software completely works on virus signatures and virus definitions, which is why it's crucial that you always keep your antivirus software updated. Because with all of this technology and everything, everybody's life revolves around the computer. Every information's on the computer. And if your antivirus is outdated and a new virus comes out that your antivirus software doesn't know, your computer's screwed if you happen to get it. On-access scanning doesn't catch a lot of things because there's some things that will get past the primary part of the antivirus software. So at that time, you can do a full system scan, which will scan like extra drives that aren't normally scanned because there's some drivers that the antivirus software forgets about and doesn't think they would be infected or something like that, but it'll still get infected. So in the full system scan, it'll scan every single system connected to the computer. There's a lot of different ways to prevent viruses. The biggest one, I talked to my brother-in-law, who is he works for OSF St. Anthony Medical Center, which is a hospital right off of Roxbury in East State, and he's in the security field. He's a network administrator, but he handles the security side of it. And he said that the biggest problem he finds with his associates and everything is that they open up fake emails. Fake emails, like how you can tell it's fake is if it's from an unknown sender. If it has no subject, then you definitely know it's fake because some people shouldn't have access to work email addresses that you would check in like a business perspective. And if they just happen to get it and it's from an unknown sender, doesn't have subject, never seen it before, that's a red flag. You shouldn't open it. And another big thing is like if you're on social media networks and you get a message from somebody and it has a link, like it'll be like a legitimate link, it looks like it'll be FACEBO.OK.co. That's definitely a fake link, and as soon as you click that, it's going to SQL inject your computer or your device, and then it can take over your social media. So I don't know if anyone in here has had like their Facebook hacked or by clicking on a link, or their Twitter hacked on it. It's just a nuisance, and then you get all the spam, and then people message you like, "Oh no, stop sending me all the spam. I don't want your shit." But you just gotta kick them out and do it. your antivirus should come automatically with scan, and it should scan frequently. Like, if not, you can change that in the control panel, and you can make it to where it'll scan every night. And the best time you should scan is probably in the late at night between the 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. period, which is where all the activity is, because that's when we're all sleeping. Because we all have lives to go to in the next morning. What do you do if you have a virus? If a normal scan fails and you know you have a virus, or like if you're doing a virus scan and it just stops halfway through the scan, you know something's up. And if your virus protection isn't testing it, then it's something more than virus, which moves into the category called malware. And malware sucks. I don't know if anyone's had to lose a computer because of malware, because it's been so infected that you can't even fix it, not even with the open source Linux tool to get rid of it. There's a lot. The malware tool that I found the most helpful and always works for me is Malwarebytes Anti-Malware. One of the best free malware programs out there. And that's it. Is there any questions?
What you just mentioned up on the board, the last software you mentioned, Malwarebytes.
I'll put it on the board.
Yeah, just go ahead. That'd be great. Any questions?
Any questions?
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't know how this happened, but exactly as my Facebook got hacked, my Yahoo Mail got hacked. And then when I went to reset my password, it sent it to my Yahoo Mail, and I couldn't get it to my Yahoo Mail because I was hacked at the same time somehow.
Was your Yahoo Mail linked up to your Facebook?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I didn't know what to do. Thank God I remembered the answers to the 3 security questions, so it let me reset. I don't remember if I reset Yahoo or Facebook, but it asked me those 3. But then, you know, you can put in your cell phone number, so in case that does happen, they can call you on the cell phone, the computer. I don't know if you know, but they'll call you and they'll ask you, like, to enter something, and then, because it knows you're on the cell phone. It's not, okay, it's not like your computer gets hacked and then you put in your cell number. Right now, I can go to Yahoo Mail, Facebook, and enter my cell number. So if that happens again, they can call me. It's not a person, it's a computer calls you, and then they, in case something like that happens. I don't know if it's such a good idea. I don't know if I want them to have my cell number too, you know, because that's
if you have an Android, I wouldn't let them get your cell number, because there's a social, I forget what it is, but Backtrack or Kali Linux has it, and it's like you can send a link through a text message, and you open the link, and your phone's taken over. Yeah. So it could be from a fake Facebook. Right. So yeah, I wouldn't give them my number. I keep everything low key. Yes.
Are anti-malware and anti-malware programs like a step-up antivirus, or are they two separate?
You can't substitute them for normal antivirus because you got to pay for it. The freeware is just like the free version of it's just a scam, and it's basically your last resort. If your all other things fail, well, I guess the last resort would be like going to a Linux open source tool and like completely destroying it. But yeah, it's not, you can't substitute it for antivirus. It's still good to have antivirus, but it's always a good tool to have on there just in case you have something bigger than a virus. Anyone else?
As far as cell phone users, I know you mentioned that. Is there any software you've experienced or you know that people have used in the mobile platform, like Android or whatever it may be?
The only thing that I've really heard of is through using computers or cell phones, like, because I know Android, you can download an app that lets you boot Linux to your Android device now.
Okay. So
you can like just go and backtrack and then create up a false number under an emulator. That's how I've known it to come about.
Okay. All right. Good. Well, it's good. Good job. Yeah, go for it. Yeah. Right there. Well, I do have a. This is his USB. Represent. And microphone. Do you have your microphone on still, Josh? Oh. It's all right. All right, come on up. Is this your? Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, I'll get switched over for you. All right, last presenter. So after Justin's finished here, we're done for this week. And then next Tuesday, we got a couple going and one on Thursday next week. Go ahead and have you put this. All right. Yep, it is. All right. Let's give Justin our attention.
Alright, so my topic was secure passwords are often hard to remember, discuss the trade-offs between security and convenience. The problems we have, users have many passwords to remember today. You've got computer password, your email, any site you visit really wants you to set up an account, you have a password to remember. And everybody's told that they have to have complex passwords, which makes remembering them more difficult. Users tend to pick easy to remember passwords because they don't want to forget and go through the deal of I forgot my password and all that stuff. Passwords alone are not a very secure method of authentication. They're easy to crack. So those are the problems. We got some simple password advice. Use a password manager. Change your passwords frequently and keep your password secret. It's simple. However, once we get into the don'ts, it gets a little more complicated. Don't use any dictionary words, birthdays, family, pet names, etc. Those are easier for the cracking programs to figure out. Don't use the same password for different sites. Otherwise, if they get one site, they've got access to all of them. Use the same password, in theory. You know. Don't use the automatic sign-in on boot up or in browsers or anything like that. Not really sure why that's a problem. Probably because cookies can be active. Don't enter passwords on a computer you don't control, like friends, because you don't know what's on there. And don't enter password over Wi-Fi, open Wi-Fi. We all saw how easy that is to crack. And don't enter your password via email links, because often those are phishing scams. Where I got this from, Bruce Schneider, he's a well-known security expert. He admits to breaking 7 of these rules regularly. So nobody's really following this advice. This comment comes up every time you read an article on passwords. It's quoted all the time. The poor part is on the bottom here, through 20 years of effort, we've successfully trained everyone to use passwords that are hard for humans to remember, but easy for computers to guess or crack. And in 1979, Bell Labs did a study where they discovered the problem of password fatigue. Humans just aren't able to cut out to remember all these complex passwords. This quote here from the conclusions, human beings being what they are, there's a strong tendency for people to choose relatively short and simple passwords that they can remember. And etc. 60% of the user passwords are less than 5 characters long. And 86% relied on dictionary names or name lists to create them. The results were disappointing, except to the bad guy. That was in 1979. Security versus convenience. The internet wasn't really designed with security in mind. This problem just kind of came about. Nobody really knew what the internet was going to turn into. This quote from our article, computers don't really serve their purpose if it's too difficult for users to access them. Therefore, in the majority of cases, user convenience trumps security, as usability and access to systems and services is of primary importance. So it's more important for people to use the computers most of the time than have real mega security like we're guarding missile silos. It's just most of the time it's not really important for people to be that secure. This is from another study on the psychology of password management. They found out that motives behind how people pick passwords are really complex. Users tend to have a general understanding of security risks and the importance of strong words, but most people and organizations have internet security is important, and security breaches can be catastrophic, but it won't really happen to me. You know? And password management is about convenience. Users associate secure passwords with the loss of convenience. It's really hard to remember these passwords and keep track of them all. The only time people will choose a secure password is not because they know it's secure, but because they're willing to sacrifice that convenience, like for a banking website or something that's really important to them. So what passwords are people using today? This is from 2007, I believe, MySpace Phishing Attack. And it lists the top 20 passwords. I'm not going to read them all, but all pretty common. Password one. Monkey, I don't know why that's so popular, but it is for some reason. And here's some more details from that attack. Around 100,000 accounts were compromised. Most of the passwords were actually decent and improved over the past. Most previous popular password was password, now it's password one. So the users are getting a little better. 65% of the passwords were 8 characters or less. Only 17% were 6 characters, so that's a big improvement from 1979. The average password was 8 over 6, which is a little bit better. And less than 4% were dictionary words. Most were alphanumeric, so they at least had a number in there, which makes it a little bit harder. But not hard enough, as we see, passwords are really easy to crack. Ars Technica had a series of articles earlier last year. The first one, they had one of their editors with no experience in password cracking try to figure it out, and he chronicled his adventures, and his hardest part was figuring out how the software worked. Once he figured out how that worked, he got almost half the password relatively easy. Then they gave the list to the experts, and the least successful cracked 6% in about an hour. Well, it wasn't really trying, he was just kind of half-assing it, I guess. The most successful tried a little harder, and he got 90% in 20 hours, using a powerful graphic card and more advanced methods. So it's really easy to crack the password list once they get their hands on them. 2 strong web passwords really accomplish anything. This is from a HotSec07 study, and they found that traditional bad password advice given users is somewhat dated. Strong passwords do nothing to protect online users from password stealing attacks such as phishing and keylogging, and they basically consider burden on users. It's hard to remember all this stuff and think of them. They say that passwords are too weak to invite brute force attacks. However, we find that relatively weak passwords, about 20 bits or so, are sufficient to make brute force attacks on a single phone unrealistic, so long as a 3 strikes rule is in place, like you enter the wrong password on a website, will lock you out for a period of time. So that's enough in most cases. Above that minimum appears increasing password strength does nothing little to address any real threat. So what are some solutions people can do now and in the future? Use a complicated passphrase for stuff you care about based on a sentence, something that's easy to remember. Use some kind of password management program. Some researchers are working on graphical passwords. There's a lot of other location authentication based on your IP address or cookies. There's other two-factor authentication, cell phone swiping, got a little dongle. And then we got biometrics, which we're working on. I'll just briefly go through these. So form a passphrase from an easy-to-remember sentence. This method is still pretty secure. It gets around how the cracking software works. They're always looking for dictionary words. This kind of just makes a jumbled password. So yeah, I got an example here. This example is really good. It's got the word "I" in there. I guess that would probably give away a little bit. But my password is easy to remember, and now I am secure with the MEIE, et cetera, et cetera. That's how that works. Password management programs. These keep track of the password for you. You don't have to remember anything except for the main password to access it. They're relatively easy to use, and they can generate complex passwords for you. They can be a little bit inconvenient to use, though. I only tried one called LastPass, and I don't know, it wasn't really easy to use. I don't know if there's easy to look into some other ones to see how they work. But you need to open a program up each time you want to access the password and copy and paste it in there. It's not, you know, if you really care about the password period, it's not too much of a trade-off, but there is a little bit of effort involved in using it. And if your file is somehow compromised, they have all the passwords. So That's always something to think about when using one of those. Graphical passwords is a possible alternative because humans remember pictures better than text, so that's why they're looking into this. They're more difficult to crack by traditional attack methods, but they're not widely used, so more studies are needed. So that could be something coming down the line in the future. A lot of websites will do some kind of location-based authentication in a different password now. If they see you're on a different computer or a different IP address, they'll have you enter more information like your security question, whatever. This will probably, I imagine, this will be bypassed pretty easily by hackers. So I mean, they can spoof their IP address and all that stuff. This is just another layer of security, though. Something to take advantage of if it's available. And we got these tokens. A lot of online banking and games use these. I got one. It's a little device. But when you enter your credentials in, it'll ask for another authentication number, and you hit the button on the device, and it'll give you a number, and you enter that in there. So it's another layer of security. Overall, it's a pretty good solution, but there's still a workforce of these people being vulnerable to hacking, so I'm not sure how they're doing that. I really can find a lot of information on it, but there is concern about that. And if you lose or somehow the little dongle thing stops working, you can't access your resources, you're locked out. And sometimes it costs a little bit more to use these things or get them. And then biometrics. Advantages, it's real convenient for users. You just swipe your finger, look into the camera, or say a phrase or something. And in theory, it should be difficult to hack or duplicate. The disadvantages is cost, it's real expensive. If somehow it is compromised someday, how do you change your fingerprint? How do you change your voice? How do you change your face, your eyes, whatever? So it will still require some sort of backup, a password, a PIN number, or something in case of that. The technology just isn't ready. But I have my laptop, the fingerprint scanning thing never works. It's like I set it up a couple times, tried it, and it never works. So I don't know. But, and finally, voice authentication. It was NPR where a guy was storyboard guy was talking about this. The app can train about 10 minutes. It's dynamic, so it's very difficult to duplicate someone's voice effectively and trick this software. You need to be trained to recognize when it's listening to a recording, which is pretty neat. But any voice issues can, again, be an issue. If you get older, your voice changes, or if you're sick, you've got laryngitis or something, how do you get access your accounts or whatever. So in conclusion, more often than not, good security actually requires convenience to be effective. If it's not somewhat convenient to use, people just aren't going to use it and they're going to bypass it, really. Found that out. Users tend to make decisions about their password based on convenience. Is it really worth them to have a strong, difficult to remember password? Password authentication isn't really going to go anytime soon, so use one of these two-factor authentication or whatever else is available when it is available. That's it.
One question. As far as the two-factor authentication, does anybody use that in here? You guys use that two-factor authentication, like the Google app or whatever, or the Android app? I use Android. Google makes an app called Authenticator. Yeah. You can use, you log in, because I have a lot of websites, manage a lot of websites, and to log in to manage the website, you put a password in, then you have to put a code from this two-factor authentication that Google makes. So even if somebody was to guess your password, they're not going to be able to guess that random code. And so it is a, I've noticed, so the inconvenience of that would be if I don't have my phone with me at the time, which I don't normally do. But there is even the two-factor, I believe, a way you can bypass that with like questions or something like that.
Yeah.
But one of the things I would recommend on password keeping, I've never used password to keep software, never. Most IT folks I know over the years, closely I know, don't as well. When you're in IT, I recommend to students, because you're working with passwords all the time and people that you're working for, is IT folks have a tendency to be able to forget passwords easily of people they work with all the time.
Yeah.
So at the same time, you can remember your own passwords.
Yeah, I usually remember
fairly
mine,
easily.
except for something I haven't used in a long time.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And most, I would recommend when you have multiple accounts with your password to have 3 or 4 variations of the same password,
right.
meaning the last half of it being different numbers possibly, and a different character. That way it's easy to, you know, if you forget it, oh, it's got to be one of these 3 type thing.
Yeah,
But yeah, I like the comic strip you said about, you know, the quote you put about the guy who wrote the article saying he broke how many, out of the 7 rules, he broke like 5 or 6 out of the 7 rules.
right. Yeah,
I think all of us do that, myself including. But I would think one day we would get to where the voice video or voice facial recognition would be pretty convenient.
Yeah,
I think
that's where it's going to go.
because even if I'm sick, right, my voice sounds different. But hopefully my face doesn't change much
Right.
in a year. But if it does, it might be one of those deals to where you're forced to set it up again every 6 months or every year. Take your picture again, do your voice again, whatever the case may be. But I would like that. That would be, as far as convenience,
Right.
that'd be awesome to be able to go into any website and do voice, face, done.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, I like
all
the
of our phones
idea,
have cameras now.
Yeah, the laptop's got the facial, that doesn't work either. So I don't
Oh
know.
yeah, exactly. But I think we should be able to get there
Yeah, eventually
one
we'll
day.
Yeah.
So, good presentation. Let's give it a hand. Okay, so we have again a couple presenters next Tuesday, and this podcast will be posted, and I'll email you guys probably here in the next couple minutes where to find it. The presentations from tonight, you have the Prezi and 2 PowerPoints will also be posted in this week's conference, and in the email I'll put a link right to that conference like I did Tuesday. So, any questions? All right, we'll see you guys next Tuesday. Have a great weekend.